The council chamber stretched for what seemed like miles. Jack Morrison sat in the human chair, small and simple compared to the massive seats around him. Above him, creatures from 47 different worlds watched with eyes that glowed, blinked, or didn't look like eyes at all. Some breathed air like him. Others floated in specialized chambers filled with liquids or gases he couldn't even pronounce. The Vrexian chancellor rose from his seat. He was massive, standing nearly 12 feet tall, with a body that looked like a mantis mixed with a spider. His voice came through the translator as a deep rumble that made the floor vibrate. "The Galactic Council has reached its decision," the chancellor announced. "Humanity has expanded too quickly. Your technology grows too fast. Your military builds ships at an alarming rate. You are a danger to the stability of our galaxy." Jack kept his face neutral. He had practiced this moment in his mind 1,000 times. Around him, other council members nodded their various heads, tentacles, or whatever they used to show agreement. The Xylothian ambassador, who looked like a floating jellyfish made of light, pulsed in what Jack had learned meant satisfaction. "You have 30 galactic cycles to comply with our demands," the chancellor continued. "You will dismantle all military installations beyond your home system. You will allow council inspectors unlimited access to all human territories. You will submit to our guidance and oversight. If you refuse, the council will enforce these requirements by force." It was an ultimatum. Surrender or face war against the combined might of 47 alien civilizations. Any reasonable person would be terrified. Any sensible diplomat would start negotiating immediately, begging for better terms or more time. Jack Morrison smiled. It wasn't a big smile. Just a small curve at the corner of his lips. But in the silent chamber, with every alien eye watching him, it was impossible to miss. "Ambassador Morrison," the chancellor said slowly, "do you understand what we have just told you?" Jack leaned back in his chair. He folded his hands across his stomach, looking relaxed, looking almost happy. "Oh, I understand perfectly," Jack said. His voice was calm and steady. "You've just declared war on humanity." The chamber erupted in noise. Aliens of all types began talking at once, their translators creating a jumble of sounds. The chancellor raised several of his limbs for silence. "We have not declared war," the chancellor said firmly. "We have given you a choice. Comply or face consequences." "Right," Jack said. He was still smiling. "War, then. You seem remarkably calm for someone whose species faces extinction," the Xylothian ambassador said. Their light pulsed with what might have been confusion or anger. Jack looked up at them all. These proud, ancient species. Some of them had been traveling the stars for thousands of years before humans invented the wheel. They had technology that seemed like magic. They had knowledge that spanned millennia, and they had absolutely no idea what they had just done. "Can I tell you something?" Jack asked. "It's finally the moment." "What moment?" the chancellor demanded. "The moment we've been waiting for," Jack said simply. "See, when humanity first met you all 70 years ago, we had a choice to make. We could trust that you would always be friendly, or we could prepare for the possibility that one day you might not be." Jack stood up slowly. He was so much smaller than most of the beings in the room, but he didn't look small. Not anymore. "We chose to prepare," Jack said, "and we've been preparing every single day since then." Far away on Earth, Admiral Kate Sullivan sat in a room deep underground. The walls were lined with screens showing ships, weapons, and military installations all across human space. When Jack's message came through, she didn't look surprised. She looked ready. "He gave the signal," one of her officers said. Kate nodded once. "Initiate protocol endgame." Her fingers moved across the controls. Across human territory, millions of systems came to life. Ships that had been drifting dark and cold for decades suddenly powered up their engines. Weapons platforms that looked like simple mining stations activated their true systems. And in the outer reaches of human space, hidden behind planets and inside asteroid fields, the real fleet uncloaked. Kate opened a channel to every human military installation in the galaxy. This is Admiral Sullivan. The Council has declared war. We are now executing plans that have been in development for 70 years. All units, move to your assigned positions. Show them what we really are. Back in the council chamber, the aliens were getting angry. The Chancellor's voice rose above the others. You dare threaten us? He demanded. You are one species. One small, young species. We are 47 civilizations, with thousands of years of experience. We have fleets that could darken your sun. We have weapons that could shatter your planet. Jack nodded. I know. We've studied your fleets very carefully. We've analyzed your weapons in great detail. We've watched you for 7 decades, learning everything about you. And what have you learned? The Xylothian asked, their light pulsing rapidly now. That you haven't fought a real war in 10,000 years, Jack said quietly. That your military tactics haven't changed in millennia. That you've become comfortable and predictable. That you think showing up with a big fleet is enough to make anyone surrender. The room went very quiet. You've also learned something else, Jack continued. You've learned that humans are weak, that our ships are slow, that our weapons are primitive, that we're no threat to you at all. He paused. That was the idea. The Chancellor's limbs twitched in what might have been anger or fear. You deceived us? We showed you exactly what you wanted to see, Jack said. While you were watching our public military exercises and inspecting the ships we let you see, we were building our real forces where you would never think to look. We've been doing it for 70 years. 3 generations of humans have dedicated their lives to this preparation. Why? The Chancellor asked. The anger had left his voice. Now he just sounded confused. Because humans know something you've forgotten, Jack said. Hope for peace, but prepare for war. We hoped we would never need what we've built. We really did. But we weren't going to bet our survival on hope alone. Jack walked toward the chamber door. No one tried to stop him. You have 30 cycles, you said? Jack asked. We won't need that long. You'll see our real capabilities much sooner. He turned back one more time. You wanted war. Now you've got one. I hope you're ready. Because we certainly are. The door closed behind him. In the chamber, 47 species sat in stunned silence, beginning to realize that they might have made a terrible mistake. The war had begun. 70 years earlier, the first alien ship had appeared in Earth's sky. It was beautiful and terrifying at the same time. Humans had dreamed of meeting aliens for centuries, and suddenly, it was happening. The ship was massive, bigger than anything humans had ever built. It hung over New York City like a second moon. And the whole world held its breath. General Ryan Hayes watched from a military bunker, his face tight with worry. He was 45 years old and had spent his entire career preparing for human conflicts. Now, he faced something else entirely. When the aliens made peaceful contact, most people celebrated. Ryan did not. They're friendly now, he told the president 3 days later. But that might not last. They're more advanced than us. Much more advanced. If they ever decide we're a problem, we won't be able to stop them. So, what do you suggest? The president asked. Ryan pulled out a folder thick with papers. I suggest we start the long game. We pretend to be exactly what they think we are. Weak. Simple. Not a threat. And while they think that, we build something better. Something they won't see coming. The president looked at the papers for a long time. This would take decades. Maybe longer. I know, Ryan said. I'll never see the end of it. My kids probably won't either. But if I'm right, and these aliens eventually turn on us, our grandchildren will have a chance. The president approved the plan. It was called Protocol Endgame. And it began the next day. Humans showed the aliens their military ships. These were real ships, but they were also the oldest and slowest ones humans had. They showed the aliens their weapons. But these were outdated models that looked impressive, without being actually dangerous. They let the aliens inspect their bases, but these were public bases with nothing secret inside. Meanwhile, on the dark side of the moon, construction began on something else entirely. Shipyards that would never appear on any official record. Factories that produced weapons the aliens would never see. Training facilities for soldiers who would become shadows. Lisa Chen was 6 years old when the long game began. By the time she was 20, she was graduating top of her class at the secret military academy, built inside an asteroid. By 30, she was commanding her first ship in the Shadow Fleet. The hidden armada that didn't officially exist. Her ship was called the Phoenix Dawn. It was a carrier. Massive and deadly, with technology that made alien dreadnoughts look like antiques. The ship could move faster than anything the Council had. Its weapons could punch through shields that had protected alien fleets for thousands of years. Its stealth systems made it invisible to every sensor the aliens possessed. Lisa stood on her bridge now, 70 years after General Ryan Hayes had started this whole operation. Ryan was long dead, but his vision lived on, in ships like hers. She looked at her crew, 300 men and women who had trained their entire lives for a war they hoped would never come. Admiral Sullivan is initiating Protocol Endgame, her communications officer reported. The Council declared war. Lisa felt her heart beat faster. This was it. Everything they had prepared for. Everything they had sacrificed for. 3 generations of secrecy and preparation were about to be tested. Send a message to all Shadow Fleet vessels, Lisa ordered. Execute Battle Plan Alpha. It's time to show them what we really are. Around her, 300 warships began to move. They had been hiding in the outer reaches of human space, in places the aliens never bothered to look. Behind gas giants and inside nebulas, tucked into asteroid fields and hidden in the shadows of dead stars. Now, they all came alive. The aliens had been watching humanity for 70 years. But they had only seen what humans wanted them to see. They thought human ships were slow. So humans had shown them slow ships. They thought human weapons were weak. So humans had demonstrated weak weapons. They thought humans were scattered across just a few dozen star systems. So, that's all humans had officially claimed. The truth was very different. Humans had expanded much further than the aliens knew. They had colonies in hidden systems, far from Council space. They had outposts on rocky moons and frozen dwarf planets that aliens would never think to check. They had built an empire in the shadows, and the aliens had no idea it existed. Commander Dan Foster led a team of reconnaissance ships that had been operating in Council space for 40 years. His ship, the Mercury Shadow, was small and fast. It could slip past alien sensors like it wasn't even there. Dan and his crew had been mapping every Council military installation, studying every alien fleet movement, recording every detail of their defenses. The aliens thought they were safe in their own territory. They had no idea that human eyes had been watching them for decades. When Admiral Sullivan gave the order, Dan smiled. He had been waiting for this his whole adult life. All recon teams, begin Phase 1, Dan transmitted. Light them up. Across Council space, hidden human ships activated their systems. They began jamming alien communications. They fed false information into alien sensors. They made Council fleets see threats that weren't there and miss dangers that were. The aliens had superior technology, but humans had been studying it for 70 years. They knew every weakness, every flaw, every backdoor. The long game had another component that even fewer people knew about. Amy Richardson was an intelligence officer who didn't officially exist. She had spent 20 years living among the aliens, disguised as a traitor, watching and listening. There were hundreds like her, humans who had given up everything to become spies in alien territory. Amy was on a council space station when the war began. She calmly walked to a maintenance tunnel, pulled out equipment hidden there years ago, and began sabotaging the station's defensive systems. Around the galaxy, hundreds of other agents did the same thing. The council thought they were fighting one small human species. They had no idea that humanity had spent 70 years preparing for exactly this moment. They didn't know about the Shadow Fleet. They didn't know about the spy network. They didn't know about the hidden colonies and secret bases. General Ryan Hayes had died 15 years earlier, an old man who never saw his plan come to completion. But his funeral had been attended by thousands of people who existed in the shadows. Soldiers and scientists, spies and engineers. 3 generations of men and women who had dedicated their lives to protecting humanity from a threat that might never come. Now that threat was here, and Ryan's vision was about to be tested. On Earth, Admiral Kate Sullivan sat in her command center and watched as pieces began to move across her screens. Everything was going according to plan. The aliens had made their move. Now it was humanity's turn. General Hayes was right, she said quietly. They did eventually turn on us. Her second-in-command nodded. Do you think we're ready? Kate looked at the screens showing the Shadow Fleet, the spy networks, the hidden bases, and all the secret preparations of 70 years. She thought about all the people who had sacrificed normal lives to work in secret. She thought about the soldiers who had trained for battles they hoped would never happen. We better be, Kate said, because ready or not, the war is here. The Council's first fleet emerged from hyperspace at the edge of Earth's solar system. 200 warships, each one a masterpiece of alien engineering. Some were kilometers long, bristling with weapons. Others were smaller but faster, designed to strike quickly and disappear. Together, they represented the might of civilizations that had ruled the stars for thousands of years. Admiral Kreth commanded the fleet from his flagship, a massive vessel called the Eternal Judgment. He was confident. He had pacified rebellious worlds before. Usually, just seeing his fleet was enough to make enemies surrender. The few times it wasn't, the battles were over quickly. Begin scanning the human home system, Kreth ordered. I want to know where every ship and station is located. His sensors officer worked the controls, then looked up with confusion. Sir, I'm detecting unusual readings throughout the system. What kind of readings? I'm not sure. There's something behind that large asteroid field near the 4th planet, and the radiation from that gas giant is interfering with our scans. And there seems to be debris fields that are registering strange energy signatures. Kreth waved a tentacle dismissively. Humans are primitive. They're probably just industrial debris or old satellites. Focus on finding their military vessels. What Kreth didn't know was that Dan Foster was watching him. Dan sat in the cockpit of the Mercury Shadow, hidden behind one of those asteroids. His ship was so quiet that it barely registered as anything more than a rock. Around the solar system, 50 other reconnaissance ships were similarly positioned. Dan watched the Council fleet spread out in a standard search pattern. It was the same pattern they had used for centuries. Humans had studied it extensively. They're doing exactly what we predicted, Dan reported quietly. They're moving into the trap. Admiral Kate Sullivan received the report on Earth. She sat in her command center, watching a 3-dimensional display of the solar system. 200 red dots represented the Council fleet. 300 blue dots, currently invisible to the aliens, represented humanity's true strength. All units, this is Sullivan, she transmitted. Execute Battle Plan Delta. Show them what we really are. Around the solar system, human ships came to life. The asteroid field, that the Council thought was just debris, suddenly lit up with engine signatures. What looked like rocks were actually ships covered in camouflage. The debris fields near Jupiter weren't debris at all. They were weapons platforms waiting for activation. Even the dark side of Mars had been hiding a full battle group. In less than 30 seconds, The Council fleet found itself surrounded. Commander Lisa Chen stood on the bridge of the Phoenix Dawn as her carrier's stealth systems deactivated. One moment, her ship was invisible. The next, it appeared right in the middle of the Council formation, like it had materialized out of nowhere. "Launch all fighters," Lisa ordered calmly. "Engage targets of opportunity." From the Phoenix Dawn's launch bays, 200 small fighters screamed into space. They were fast, faster than anything the Council had seen before. They darted between the alien ships like angry hornets, their weapons tearing through shields that were supposed to be impenetrable. Admiral Kreith stared at his screens in shock. "Where did they come from? How many ships do they have?" "At least 300, sir," his sensors officer reported, voice shaking. "But that can't be right. Intelligence said humans only had 50 military vessels." "Intelligence was wrong," Kreith shouted. "All ships, defensive formation, return fire." But the Council fleet was in chaos. They had been searching for an enemy, when suddenly the enemy was all around them. Their formations were broken. Their communication was confused, and the human ships were doing things that shouldn't be possible. A human destroyer, tiny compared to the Council vessels, accelerated directly at a massive alien battleship. The Council ship fired everything it had, but the human destroyer dodged with impossible agility. It rolled, twisted, and dove like a fighter jet, even though it was 1,000 times larger. Then it fired a single weapon. The shot went straight through the battleship's shields like they weren't even there. The alien ship exploded from the inside out. "How did they do that?" Kreith demanded. No one had an answer. What they didn't know was that humans had been studying Council shield technology for 70 years. They had found a weakness, a specific frequency that the shields couldn't block. Every human weapon had been designed to exploit that weakness. Dan Foster brought his reconnaissance ship out of hiding. It was time to stop watching and start fighting. He targeted a Council cruiser and fired his missiles. They were small, but they struck with devastating accuracy. The cruiser's engines exploded, leaving it drifting helplessly. All around the solar system, similar scenes played out. Human ships attacked from every direction. They used tactics the Council had never seen before. They moved in ways that seemed to violate physics. They fired weapons that cut through defenses that had protected the Council for millennia. The Council had superior numbers and technology that had been refined over thousands of years. But humans had something else. They had studied every battle the Council had ever fought. They had analyzed every tactic and every strategy. They had spent 70 years preparing specifically for this fight. And humans had another advantage. They had been fighting each other for their entire history. War was written into human DNA. The Council species had known peace for so long they had forgotten what real combat looked like. After 20 minutes, half the Council fleet was destroyed or disabled. The survivors were in full retreat. Admiral Kreith, his ship's systems failing around him, sent a desperate message back to Council space. "This isn't the humanity we studied. These aren't the ships we inspected. They lied to us. They've been hiding their real strength this whole time. We need reinforcements. We need everything we have." The message cut off as another human weapon struck his ship. Kate Sullivan watched the battle from Earth. It was going exactly as planned. Better, even. The Council had underestimated humanity completely. "Send a message to Admiral Kreith's flagship," Kate ordered, "before it's completely destroyed." Her communications officer nodded. A moment later, Kate's face appeared on every surviving Council ship's screen. "This is Admiral Kate Sullivan of the Earth Defense Fleet," she said calmly. "You came to our home to intimidate us. You thought we would see your fleet and surrender. You were wrong." On the screen behind her, the battle continued. Human ships hunted the fleeing Council vessels with ruthless efficiency. "You thought you knew what humanity was capable of," Kate continued. "You thought you had been watching us, but we were watching you too. And while you were busy feeling superior, we were preparing. Every day for 70 years. We prepared for the moment when you would decide we were a threat." A Council battleship exploded in the background of her transmission. You declared war on us, Kate said. We accepted. But understand this. We didn't want this war. We hoped it would never happen. But we were ready for it anyway. And now you're going to learn what happens when you attack a species that has spent its entire existence learning how to fight. She leaned forward, her eyes hard. This is just the beginning, Kate said. This is us defending our home. Wait until you see what happens when we come to yours. The transmission ended. In the solar system, the battle was winding down. The Council fleet, that had come to intimidate humanity, was destroyed. A few ships escaped, running back to Council space to warn them of what they had found. Lisa Chen stood on her bridge, watching the last of the enemy ships disappear into hyperspace. Her crew was celebrating, but she remained serious. This was just the first battle. The war was far from over, but it was a good start. The emergency council session was nothing like the proud gathering that had declared war on humanity. Now, the chamber was filled with panic and confusion. Holographic displays showed battle reports from across the galaxy, and every single one told the same story. Humans were winning. The Vrexian chancellor stood in the center, his multiple limbs shaking with rage and fear. He demanded, "We sent the first fleet. 200 ships. They were destroyed in less than an hour. Not just destroyed," the Xylothian ambassador added, their light pulsing erratically. Completely outmatched. Our weapons couldn't penetrate their defenses. Our shields couldn't stop their attacks. They moved faster than our sensors could track. A small reptilian delegate from the Korthan Empire spoke up. This is more than just better technology. They knew exactly where to strike. They knew our formations, our tactics, our weaknesses. They've been studying us. For how long? The Chancellor asked. Since first contact, came a new voice. Colonel Amy Richardson walked into the chamber, surrounded by human security personnel. She was still technically a prisoner of the Council, but no one tried to stop her. We've been studying you for 70 years. The chamber erupted in angry voices. The Chancellor raised his limbs for silence. You spied on us? While pretending to be our friends? Amy shook her head. We weren't your friends. You never treated us as equals. You tolerated us, watched us, and always looked at us like we were children playing with dangerous toys. We knew eventually you would decide we were a threat. So we prepared. You deceived us, the Xylothian said accusingly. We showed you exactly what you expected to see, Amy corrected. You thought you were superior to us, so you only saw what confirmed that belief. You never bothered to look deeper. That was your mistake, not ours. More reports came in. Human strike teams had infiltrated Council space stations. Supply depots were being destroyed. Communication networks were being disrupted. Humans weren't just fighting back. They were attacking. A military strategist named General Vorax took the floor. He was a Krillian, a species known for their tactical genius. We need to understand what we're facing. This isn't a lucky victory. This is systematic and planned. They have infiltrated our space. They have agents in our territory. They know our infrastructure better than we do. He brought up a star map. Red markers appeared across Council space. These are confirmed locations where humans have struck. Notice the pattern? They're targeting supply lines, communication hubs, and strategic resources. They're not trying to conquer territory. They're trying to cripple our ability to wage war. The Chancellor studied the map. How many agents do they have in our space? We don't know, Vorax admitted. We've identified at least 300 individuals who were definitely human spies. But they had been operating here for decades. There could be hundreds more we haven't found. In a secure facility on a Council world, Amy's team of intelligence officers was busy at work. They had stopped pretending to be traitors, diplomats, or students. Now they wore human military uniforms and worked openly to sabotage Council operations. One of Amy's officers, a young man named Greg Parker, was hacking into the local defense grid. We've got access to their planetary shields, he reported. I can lower them anytime we need. Amy nodded. Stand by. The Shadow Fleet will be here within the day. When they arrive, we'll give them a clear path, right to the military headquarters. This was happening on dozens of worlds simultaneously. Human agents who had spent years building false identities now revealed themselves and struck at the heart of Council infrastructure. Back in the Council chamber, the reality of the situation was becoming clear. One delegate after another stood to report similar problems. Communications were unreliable. Supply chains were disrupted. Military installations were being hit by forces that seemed to appear out of nowhere. We need to call for a ceasefire, one delegate suggested. Open negotiations before this gets worse. Negotiations? The Chancellor said bitterly. And what would we negotiate? We declared war on them. We demanded their surrender. Now they're showing us that they're stronger than we ever imagined. One they're one. One they sadn't for. One they sadn't. Then we gather all our forces, another delegate said. Every ship from every member species. They can't fight all of us at once. General Vorax shook his head slowly. You're not understanding. They let us think we were stronger. For 70 years, they showed us a false face. How do we know what their real strength is? This fleet we're seeing might just be a fraction of what they actually have. The chamber went quiet. It was a terrifying thought. If what they had seen so far was just part of humanity's real military, what else were the humans hiding? Everyone. Commander Lisa Chen's fleet had moved deep into Council territory. They weren't invading to conquer. They were invading to prove a point. Her ships appeared above important Council worlds, disabled the orbital defenses, and then left without attacking the planets themselves. The message was clear. We can reach you anywhere. We can destroy your defenses whenever we want. We're choosing not to harm your civilians. But we could, if we wanted to. It was psychological warfare, and it was working. Panic spread through Council space. If the mighty defense fleets couldn't stop the humans, what could? If their orbital platforms were useless against human weapons, how were they supposed to feel safe? On one world, Lisa's fleet appeared over the capital city. The population of billions watched in terror as human warships filled their sky. But instead of attacking, Lisa broadcast a message. We are not here to harm you, her voice echoed across the planet. We are here to show you that your leaders made a mistake. They declared war on humanity, thinking we were weak. We are not weak. We are not your enemies, but we will defend ourselves. Pressure your government to end this war. Then her fleet disappeared, jumping away to the next target. It was brilliant strategy. Instead of fighting the Council's billions of citizens, humans were turning them against their own governments. Fear and anger spread through Council space. Why had their leaders started a war with such a dangerous enemy? Admiral Kate Sullivan coordinated everything from Earth. She had multiple fleets operating simultaneously across dozens of star systems. She had intelligence teams feeding her constant updates. She had agents sabotaging enemy infrastructure. It was the most complex military operation in human history, and it was working. How long do you think before they ask for peace? Her second-in-command asked. Kate studied her displays. Council forces were in disarray. Their fleets were scattered, trying to defend too many places at once. Their supply lines were broken. Their communications were compromised, and their people were beginning to question why this war had started in the first place. Not long, Kate said. But we can't let up. If we give them time to recover and regroup, they might find a way to adapt. We have to keep the pressure on until they're ready to negotiate on our terms. Back in the Council chamber, Jack Morrison walked in. He was still technically Earth's ambassador, though calling him a prisoner would be more accurate now. But he walked in like he owned the place, with human security guards following him. Chancellor, Jack said pleasantly. I thought I should attend this session. After all, you're discussing a war with my people. This is a closed session, the Chancellor said weakly. Not anymore, Jack replied. He took his seat and looked around at all the alien faces. You all look worried. I can't imagine why. This is what you wanted, isn't it? A war? You tricked us, the Xylothian accused. We prepared, Jack corrected. There's a difference. We hoped you would never declare war on us. We really did. But when you met us, you treated us like primitive children. You made assumptions about us. You thought you knew what we were capable of, based on what you saw. You never considered that we might be showing you only what we wanted you to see. He stood up and walked to the center of the chamber. My species has a saying, Jack said. Hope for the best. Prepare for the worst. We hoped for peace. We prepared for war. And now that you've given us war, you're learning what 70 years of preparation looks like. The Chancellor looked defeated. What do you want? That's a good question, Jack said with a slight smile. Maybe we should talk about peace, on our terms this time. The war lasted 3 years in total, but everyone knew the outcome after the first 6 months. Humanity didn't need to conquer the galaxy. They just needed to prove they couldn't be conquered. Battle after battle showed the same result. Human tactics were better. Human technology was superior. And human determination was unbreakable. The peace talks took place on a neutral space station at the edge of the galaxy. It was a small station, unremarkable except for the fact that representatives of 47 alien species and humanity were gathering there to end a war. Admiral Kate Sullivan led the human delegation. She was 58 years old now, with gray in her hair and lines on her face that hadn't been there 3 years ago. The war had aged her, but it hadn't broken her. She walked into the conference room with her head high and her shoulders straight. The alien delegates looked very different than they had 3 years ago. The proud certainty was gone. Now they looked tired and defeated. The Vrexian Chancellor seemed smaller somehow, even though he still towered over the humans. Thank you for coming, the Chancellor said quietly. We are ready to discuss peace terms. Kate took her seat at the head of the table. Jack Morrison sat beside her, along with several military advisors and diplomats. On the other side were representatives from every council species. Before we begin, Kate said, I want to be clear about something. We didn't want this war. We never wanted this war. For 70 years, we prepared for it while hoping it would never come. But you gave us no choice. We understand that now, the Xylothian ambassador said. Their light pulsed in what Kate had learned meant shame. We underestimated you. We made assumptions based on incomplete information. We underestimated. You made assumptions based on arrogance, Jack corrected bluntly. You thought you were superior to us. You thought being older and more experienced meant you were better. You were wrong. The Chancellor nodded slowly. We were wrong. We admit this. The question now is what comes next. What are your terms? What? Kate pulled up a document on the holographic display. First, Earth and all human territories are recognized as sovereign. No council species has any authority over human space. No inspections, no oversight, no interference. The delegates nodded. They had expected this. Second, Kate continued, humanity gets a permanent seat on the Galactic Council with full voting rights and veto power. We will be equal partners in any galactic decisions. This caused some murmuring among the aliens. But no one objected. They had lost the war. They didn't get to dictate terms. Third, all council species will open formal diplomatic relations with humanity. Trade agreements, cultural exchanges, scientific cooperation. We want to be part of the galactic community, not isolated from it. And fourth, Jack added, there will be a formal apology. Not just to humanity, but to every species in the galaxy. The Council needs to acknowledge that you started this war based on fear and prejudice. You need to own your mistake. The Chancellor looked pained, but he nodded. Agreed. We will issue a formal statement, taking responsibility for our actions. Over the next week, the details were worked out. Borders were established. Treaties were signed. Reparations were agreed upon. Though Kate didn't push for much. Humanity had proven their point. They didn't need to humiliate the council further. On the final day of negotiations, a young alien diplomat asked Kate a question. Why did you prepare so extensively for a war you hoped would never happen? Why spend so much time and resources on something that might not come? Kate thought about General Ryan Hayes, the man who had started it all 70 years ago. She thought about all the people who had worked in secret, sacrificing normal lives to prepare for a threat that might never materialize. She thought about her own career, spent entirely in the shadow military that officially didn't exist. Because hope isn't a strategy, Kate said simply. We hoped for peace, but we prepared for war. That's the difference between wishing for something and making sure it happens. We wanted peace, so we made sure we were too strong to be threatened. Commander Lisa Chen attended the signing ceremony. She stood with the rest of the Shadow Fleet officers, wearing her uniform proudly for the first time in public. For 70 years, she and her fellow officers had been ghosts. Now, they could finally be acknowledged. The ceremony was broadcast across the galaxy. Billions of beings watched as the Vrexian Chancellor and Kate Sullivan signed the peace treaty. It was historic. It was the first time in galactic history that a young species had fought the Council to a standstill and won. After the signing, there was a reception. Kate found herself talking to General Vorax, the Krillian military strategist who had tried to warn the Council about humanity's true capabilities. Your people are remarkable, Vorax said. I've studied warfare for 3 centuries. I've never seen such comprehensive preparation combined with such effective execution. We learned from the best, Kate replied. We studied every war your species have fought. We analyzed your tactics, your strategies, your mistakes. You gave us a template for how to fight you. Vorax made a sound that might have been a laugh. We taught you how to defeat us. The irony is profound. The tragedy is that it was necessary, Kate corrected. If you had treated us as equals from the beginning, none of this would have happened. 20 years later, Kate Sullivan retired. She left the military and moved to a small house in Montana, as far from spaceports and military bases as she could get. She was done with war. She had spent her entire adult life preparing for it, fighting it, and ending it. Now, she wanted peace. But peace didn't mean forgetting. Kate occasionally gave lectures at military academies, both human and alien. Students came from across the galaxy to hear her speak about strategy, preparation, and the importance of respecting your potential enemies. Her most famous quote became part of military doctrine across multiple species. Peace is not the absence of capability for war. Peace is the choice not to use that capability. But never let your enemy think you don't have it. The galaxy settled into a new normal. Humanity was now recognized as a major power, equal to any other species. Human ships patrolled their territory with pride, instead of hiding in shadows. Human diplomats sat in council chambers, and their voices carried real weight. But the Shadow Fleet still existed. It was smaller now, and everyone knew about it. But it remained. Because humanity had learned a lesson they would never forget. Being prepared had saved them. Staying prepared would keep them safe. Lisa Chen eventually became an admiral herself. She took command of the entire Shadow Fleet, overseeing the forces that existed specifically to protect humanity from future threats. She retired at 60, having spent her entire career in service to a cause that had begun before she was born. On her last day of active duty, a young officer asked her if she thought there would ever be another war. I hope not, Lisa said honestly. But if there is, humanity will be ready. That's what we do. We prepare for the worst, while hoping for the best. Jack Morrison lived to be 93 years old. He saw humanity go from a species fighting for survival to a respected member of the galactic community. He saw human culture spread across the stars. He saw young humans and aliens studying together, working together, building friendships that would have been impossible during the war. On his deathbed, surrounded by family, someone asked him if he had any regrets about the war. Only one, Jack said quietly. I regret that it was necessary. I regret that the Council couldn't see us as equals until we forced them to. But I don't regret how we handled it. We did what we had to do to survive. The galaxy learned to live with humanity. Some species remained wary, remembering how thoroughly they had been deceived and defeated. Others embraced humans as allies and friends, but all of them respected humanity now. The days of treating humans as primitive newcomers were over, and deep in space, hidden in places only humans knew about, new ships were being built. New weapons were being developed. New soldiers were training, because humanity had learned the most important lesson of all. The galaxy was not a safe place. It was beautiful and full of wonders, but it was also dangerous. Species rose and fell. Alliances shifted. Threats emerged from unexpected places, and the only way to survive was to be prepared. General Ryan Hayes had understood this 70 years before anyone else. His vision had saved humanity. His legacy lived on in every ship, every soldier, every defensive installation across human space. The galaxy was finally at peace. But it was a peace built on strength, not weakness. It was a peace that existed because humanity had proven they were too dangerous to threaten. And it was a peace that would last because humanity never stopped preparing for the moment it might end. That was the human way. Hope for peace. Prepare for war. Never give up. Never surrender. And never let anyone think you're weaker than you really are. The galaxy had learned that lesson the hard way. They wouldn't forget it anytime soon.